Hello and welcome. Today I want to show you how I did this winter landscape painting using watercolours, drawing pencil and a water-soluble graphite stick as well. You'll be able to see today how it all went slightly wrong, but then I managed to pull it back, so that was a bonus. I hope you enjoy watching it and I'll see you later. Bye. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sketch out the basic composition of this landscape that I've got. Using a water-soluble graphite pencil here. This is pure graphite, so there's no wood on here, and it's a lovely soft broad medium to draw with. So I'm just going to get the horizon line in first of all. There's a line of trees in the mist back here, and then the sweep of this big puddle that comes around on the path, and there's a sort of clump of reeds and things here that come up above the line of the trees in the distance, and a little glimpse of the lake back here. So I'm using the graphite on its edge. I can sort of block in shapes with that. I want this to be quite a textured, kind of visually interesting drawing. It's not, or painting, I'm not quite sure what this is. Starting with a drawing, it's going to finish up as a painting, because you can create such wonderful, interesting textures. It needs to come over a bit more. With the watercolours, with pen and wash, or line and wash. So I'm using graphite for my line, and I'm going to use the watercolours for my wash. And there's reflections in the water down here, and really I want this to be quite a chunky bit of drawing, sort of bold and dark, and then I'm going to enrich this with some lovely earthy colours just to describe this winter landscape. So here are the trees going in. All of this is water soluble, so if I add watercolours to it, this graphite is going to blend in when I do that, and it'll give it more of that kind of wintry feel, because there aren't many bright greens here. It's all browns, dark greens, yellowy colours in the grasses, and the sky is a kind of grey too, pale grey. There's some whippy sort of grasses in here, but like I say, this is just the start, so I can create more texture as I work on it. There's a change in the grasses back here. They become much rougher and coarser lumps of grass. So I've used the pencil a lot on its side here. I'm just going to go in for a little bit of a change of mark. I'm holding the pencil now in a pen grip, just a conventional grip, and then I can get some of these little swampy bits of rough grass sticking up through the puddle. It's almost a flood, this. It's so much rain here. This is a very common sight, sort of flooded path. So every tuft of grass has a corresponding bit of reflection to it. I'm thinking about what's dark and light here. The puddle is a perfect mirror for the sky. So it's you know, kind of whitish grey like the sky. Do this either way round, I guess. You could start with the watercolours and then add this drawn element, but because I wanted it to be kind of strong, I wanted to start this way, start with a kind of strong shape to the work and then put the washes in. We'll see what happens. Could all go horribly wrong at this point, hopefully not. Right, and then here there's this scuff of golden kind of grass here that is just a bit shorter than the other stuff. Okay, I'm going to make up a wash. I think I want a lot of kind of grey here. I'll wet the paper first and then I'll mix the colour. I'm just going to put a layer of water across the whole thing. Obviously that's going to soften the graphite too. Can always add it back in if it gets too soft. I can go back in with more. So I'm not doing it kind of flat. I don't mind if it's a bit varied here. And I can kind of work with this a little bit. I'm going to let that, well, I'll show you first. If I tilt the board, I'm hoping you'll see there's a shine on there at the moment from that water. And I want that shine to sink in. And yeah, that's fine. And then while I mix my colours, so I want to make a sort of neutral kind of grey. My go-to for that is French ultramarine, and plenty of it. If you don't overcompensate, you're bound to run out, and it's very frustrating because you can have to struggle then to try and get a good match again. So French ultramarine and whatever this is, it might be a paint scrap. Oh yeah, it's a dark sort of burnt umber. And that will give me a kind of neutral grey. Oops. And I can check that on my tissue. I'm just going to put whatever that is in there as well. I want something a little bit brown. I think that might be a Payne's grey. Just to kind of get a slightly earthier kind of colour. Don't want it too blue. That's better. That looks a bit better. Something in there, get that out. Okay, and what I'm going to do is use a different brush. This is the large Chinese brush that I've got. It's a goat hair one. It's got very long, quite rough hairs. This isn't a delicate brush like a sable. It's kind of weird, but effective. Okay, so I'm going to... Oh, has it gone off? It's still slightly shiny, so we'll give that a minute. Okay, I'm going to lay this grey wash on now. The shine is gone from the paper, so it's not going to bloom, I hope. I'm going to need to mix some more. Oops. I just want everything to take on some of that greyness because it'll add to the misty quality and the view. The big thing with watercolours is to bear in mind that they get lighter as they dry, so although this might look a bit alarming, I'm fairly certain it's going to dry away and be a bit paler in a minute. I'm putting a slightly lighter version of that wash down on the puddle itself. I'm also going to put a little bit more of the brown in it. Oops, because it's got this slightly muddy colour to it. That's better, and that comes right over here. and that needs to dry for a few moments. Timing is everything with watercolours. If you try and rush it, it just completely loses its way. So I'm going to let that dry for a moment. Okay, one way to tell that it's dry is that the bulge in the paper that was caused by the wetness on this side has now gone virtually flat, and it's certainly dry to the touch. So that's good enough for me. I'm now going to put more colour into the landscape. I'll just get some fresh kitchen roll. What I want to do is get the clouds in the background, not the clouds, the trees in the background. I don't want that colour, let's start again. I picked up a black there and I don't want black, I want blue and brown. So ultramarine blue, and I think this is burnt umber. And I can use, this is a nice, this is a number 16 Pro Arte Prolene watercolour brush, and I'm going to use it on its side, slightly wetter than that. And just wriggle it along. You can kind of turn it too as you go, and it leaves little gaps that help to suggest trees a little bit more watery. So it looks, as that varies, it looks as though the trees, just lighten that a little bit, are coming and going a bit at different distances to us. And then before that dries, I want to get this yellow ochre colour in the landscape. What I'm going to do is try and get quite a lot of this off. I love yellow ochre, it goes very gold when it's diluted. It's such a useful colour, very rich, just needs a bit of softening. And what I'm going to do, because there's a touch of green in there, I want to add a little dab of French ultramarine perhaps. So I want to have that next to the yellow ochre in here, and if I don't mix them, so there's yellow ochre and this greeny blue next to each other, if I lay the brush on there and don't mix them, I'm hoping that when I put it on here, the colours will kind of separate a little bit. So I'm not blending, and I'm just placing, got something hanging off here, placing the colours on. It's a bit weak, let's get more colour. And touch of the blue. It's going to be quite a limited palette really, but then it kind of is in the picture. It's wintry and things are dried up, and I think that'll help. And again, laying the brush on its side and wiggling it around, but kind of hoping that those colours will remain a little bit different from each other. And that will carry us on over here too. And then these reeds here are also in that colour. What I'm going to do with those, that I think will work well, is just use the handle of the brush to scratch those in. Wriggle that end as well, so drag them down. And then the other thing I want, this is like a raw sienna here, I think. I'm going to put that along here because that really is quite warm. That's a lovely colour. can do the same here with the grasses. The scratching actually roughs up the surface of the paper. Blot that out because that puddle goes over there, but it roughs up the surface of the paper so it kind of attracts the paint to it in quite a useful way. I've got a small brush that's scratchy there. And then build these up here too. Some lovely rich browns in these grasses. A bit more of the raw sienna. I'm going to put quite a lot of that through here because I really want this to be richly coloured, this area, and quite dense too. Put some dark in here. Okay, so I want to darken this area here. I want some greenish browns in there. It's kind of got a greyish quality to it as well there. Very cool green, so maybe something like that. I'll put some of the raw umber in there too. That's nice. And again, not mix it too thoroughly. In fact, I'm going to use my goat brush for this because it's textured. That might work better. Not too much water. What I do, and what's helpful to do with watercolours, is when you rinse your brush, is just to blot it on the kitchen roll, kitchen towel, because it helps you to control how much water there is going into the paint, and it helps you to stop it kind of running away from you. So I'm just going to put on, it's a bit thin, so I'm going to make it a stronger mix. Oops. So ultramarine blue and raw umber. And then put this on here for this dark area of reeds. I think it needs to be darker still because I really want to get some contrast in here, so make more of the colour. You can always add more with watercolours, you just can't take it out once it's on there very easily. And I can squiggle this brush around to get different textures, different marks going on. That seems quite useful. There's also a redness in this area here that I'd like to make more of because I think that will complement these cool greens. And I think I'll use a burnt sienna for this. Just get a different brush because that's a bit weird for mixing with. So I'm going to use a burnt sienna here in amongst that grassy colour. Blot my brush a little bit, pick up some more, and then squiggle that about there and get some kind of rich, warm reddish browns going on in there. And trying not to leave too much in the way of puddles on here because they do eventually reach outwards and can cause cauliflowers. You know, I'm going to roll a bit of that round in here too. I think that's quite useful. And more of the pale raw umber, sorry. I'm going to scratch into that with that little, rather an old paintbrush, but quite scratchy on the end, quite good for this. And get some finer scratching because these are further back. Oh! Too old perhaps. They're a little bit further away. So the marks can be a little bit finer for these. Sort of gives this fuzzy edge to it all here. And the grasses and reeds get kind of coarser in this way. Again, I can sort of scratch into here, so it makes the edge, where you scratch, it makes the edge of the paper fluffy, and that then sucks the colour to it. So you get these darker lines where the colour is kind of drawn into those scratched grooves. Some more of that one. I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue in with the half mixed with the burnt sienna and just make this darker. Particularly down here as well, needs a bit more going on. Oops. And here it's the water, so whatever I put in the grasses needs to be shown on the water a little bit too. Some lovely little details, but I think yeah, it's kind of working with the edge of this brush. So with water you get the reflections going vertically, but then also the horizontal plane of the water is useful to try and work with a bit. Oh, that's the gungy end of the brush. This is where I've used masking fluid. Kind of interesting. We'll try that again. Ah, okay. Oh, it's discovering something. I love how using the brush on its side gives you this organic. Use the rough and the tight end and the small end. Gives you this interesting texture when it works. And also down here in the foreground. It really is quite rough, but I want it to have a bit of life and texture to it here, because this is the part that's nearest to us. I'm going to put raw umber and burnt sienna together here. Kind of want to strike a balance between having the paint flow but not having it running all over the place. Right, getting there, so I'll just get a bit more blue in there. Putting blue at oops, burnt sienna together. There's a sort of nice clump of rough grasses here. So I want to make a bit of a feature of those perhaps. And they've got reflections here too. And they come down. more colour with a touch of water, but not much. And just draw down the reflections from that. Try and keep that wiggly edge to the puddle here. Right. That's dark in there. When you paint over those scratched lines, it makes them dark again, because it's drawing the colour to the roughed up edges of each scratch. Okay. Just noticed in the lake over here there's a reflection of the trees, which I'm going to put in. It helps to describe that that's water there. Add to the trees a bit and then do corresponding reflections there. And something else here, but I'm going to stop and dry this again because I want to draw on it again now. Okay, so I want to just make a bit more of those grasses in the front. I was trying to draw that up there, but there's not quite enough paint on there to do that. So just do a little bit more. Notice we've got cauliflowers up here, which I'll probably just leave, because often with watercolours, the more you worry about things and try and correct them, the more you draw your viewer's eye to the problem. Just going to add some more colour to the background landscape with the yellow ochre. It's really hard for some reason. Try that one. Usually these paints, these are called White Nights, and they're called semi-soft watercolours. They're usually quite good for remaining slightly wet in the, maybe if I take that up there, it might help. In the pans, they don't sort of dry rock hard like traditional watercolour pans do. So I don't know why that seems particularly hard today. Right. Okay. And just take the dribbles off of there because I don't want more cauliflowers forming. Okay, I'm going to draw on here now. If I go back in with the water-soluble graphite, it might work with some of the damper bits on here, but we'll see what happens. So I can build up more of the grasses here with this. Some little reedy things here which stand up above the skyline at the back. Get some more twiggy kind of movements in here. And add some textures in the foreground too. And I've got a very soft drawing pencil here. This is an 8B conventional drawing pencil. Just going to give me some darker marks. It's interesting where this goes over the scratched lines, it's then leaving a paler mark, a light mark. Some nice details with the reflections here, going wiggly in the water there. Just a few of those here too. Build up some of those details. You don't need to explain it all. If you explain some of it, it helps to make sense of the other things that are more vague in the work. And sort of twiggy bits and pieces around as well. Just wondering if I need to do anything else. I'm not sure that I do. I'll just make that a little bit more fuzzy along there. The great thing is, if something doesn't work with the watercolours, you can make up for it with your drawing. You get two chances, and if you're more confident at drawing than watercolours, then you can do a lot more drawing and just finish off the piece with the watercolours. You know, work with the thing you feel most confident doing and gradually rely on the drawing less and less as you go. Just wanted to add, I've got much more to do really. I should be a little bit more precise, use a smaller brush. I just want to get some more of those warm burnt sienna kind of colours in here because I think they really make this, particularly down here I think. Little touches of the burnt sienna, quite nice around these edges. And in the grasses. I have a mantra in my head saying don't fiddle, don't fiddle. So I think I may be fiddling. So I'm going to, oh, that's a dry bit. I'm going to stop there I think. In a minute. That will do. Okay, so I've had a look at it, I've stood up and had a look, and I think what I want to do is just bring this down a little bit. I've done that classic mistake of making the path go up in the air. So I'm just going to use, which brush? That brush. And some of the, yeah, the dog's hungry, this is not good. Far too early for his dinner at the moment. So I'm going to use the raw umber and the yellow ochre together and just bring that line down a little bit. A little bit of green in there too. and then sweep that across. I think that's better. There's also a bit of it here too, coming in. Just add a bit of texture there too, just to kind of incorporate it. Give it an edge. Try not to overdo it, but I'm just going to try that, I think, and draw on it maybe. And just, I think I need to bring that down a bit there too. It's hard to change a watercolour very much, but I think I can do that. Get some of that greenish stuff going on in there too. I think that's sorted now. So it was a bit of a miracle if you could correct a watercolour painting without it all going horribly wrong. I hope you found that useful, and I hope to see you again. If you like my videos, please click like and subscribe at the end. Okay, bye bye.